loans give more returns. Get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LOLC Finance.
Hi, I'm Rashantha Devanesan, creator of Kadambari Jewels. I'll be answering Living's questions for Living Gets Real.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Living Gets Real. Today on the show we have with us jeweler, designer and historian Rashantha Devanesan. She's here with us to talk about the launch of her Kadambari trade bead collection, the collaboration with Riti Store. Let's talk more about the new collection. Tell us about the inspiration behind the Kadambari trade bead collection.
So usually when I think of a collection that I need to do, it can be something that has I've got some beautiful pieces belonging to that collection, or I've read up about something. But in this case, I've had these trade beads with me for years. But when I was doing a little bit of reading up about the history of Sri Lanka, there was this very interesting fact that popped out, which I wasn't aware of before, that we were a very vibrant hub on the maritime Silk Route. Now, I have done a collection on the overland Silk Route also in Sri Lanka a few years ago. So looking further into this, the main things that were traded on this route were, among spices and other things, beads. And I happened to have a collection of a lot of those beads. So I thought, well, why not, so read a little bit more, looked into more of Sri Lanka's manufacture of beads and found that it went back to almost prehistorical times. So it's been an amazing, fascinating journey, and I think it's going to go on with me for a little longer.
How did the concept of integrating beads from different cultures influence the design of this collection?
See, always what has fascinated me is the sort of intermingling of cultures, which you see in textiles, you see in jewelry. Now this piece that I'm wearing is actually an Omani Diggy necklace, but these little pendants at the bottom have all come from India, and obviously were bought because of their visual value, the beauty of them, but they were not understood. Sometimes it's even like a little Hanuman god thing which is upside down, because it looked beautiful, but the people who bought it and wore it didn't understand the significance of it. But it also means that there was this slightly borderless cultural intermingling, which I think was a very valuable facet of old civilizations. People moved without borders, people exchanged things, and unintentionally influenced a lot of practices, food, but in my case I'm just looking at the adornment part of it.
And how does the setting of Ritihi Store complement the new Kadambari collection?
So Ritihi has carried sort of ad hoc a lot of my pieces over the years when I used to live in Singapore. I've had a few events here as well because I just feel that the whole ethos and what Valli does with the textiles she showcases as well vibes beautifully with the jewelry that I do. So it was a no-brainer when I moved to Sri Lanka and I needed somewhere to showcase my work, that Ritihi was the place I thought, and Valli was very welcoming. So this is also a kind of a public launch to tell everybody that I'm here from now on.
If you could share more about your collaboration with the Sunera Foundation and how it came about.
So that again, see, when I first started this hobby in 2010, the first event that I had in London was a very organic thing. I mean, I didn't mean to do it for a charity, but I gifted a couple of pieces to a cousin who worked with the Deaf and Blind Aid Lanka, and they asked me to do an event for them. That was my first ever event. And so that sort of told me that this is what it was supposed to be. So all the events from that time going forward have been supporting a charity. There are 5 that I work with very closely, and when I came to Sri Lanka that year, towards the end of that year, I approached Sunetra Bandaranaike because I know the work that she has been doing with disabled young people from very poor families. And she was very happy that I would support it. And so in Sri Lanka, it's been mostly the Sunera Foundation that I have supported over the years. They did have a group of her colleague classmates from Oxford in London who used to run a branch of Sunera there. So I've done a few sales in London for her as well. And I've also gone to some of the centers and done a little bit of beading workshops with the children. And that has also been such an enriching experience for me. So I think it will be ongoing.
And finally, how has your background as a jeweler, designer, and a historian shaped your approach to creating this new collection?
So the jewelry design part came very much later in my life. So I did history in university. I taught it in high school in Singapore for a few years. And it has always been sort of something I loved, reading about the past. And even with my students, I managed to convince them that it's not something that happened long ago and then was buried, because you see it repeating itself around us all the time. That's what's important about history. Lessons we can learn from it. And then when I started doing this, it sort of blended and I moved into looking at old jewelry and antique pieces. And for me again, you see, there are collectors who buy antique jewelry and it's mostly in collections, in museums, but they are never worn, because sometimes it's not possible to wear something that was worn 300 years ago. It doesn't jibe with the kind of clothes we wear. So my sort of, what shall I say, mission is to make them in such a way that they will be worn again, because jewelry really has to be worn, otherwise they don't live. And so I put them together in a slightly more contemporary way that will appeal to people who will wear them even today. And in fact, 2 of the ladies here, I think Savitri is wearing an old Turkmen piece, a Central Asian, what you call an asik. There's another one here. So these were all chest ornaments of the Turkmen people. And Gauri is wearing an old Yemeni amulet. And I'm sure they were beautiful the way they were hundreds of years ago, but then you would never wear them, you know, because it's not something that, it doesn't go with what we dress like today. So that is kind of the ethos of Kadambari, to make these old pieces of jewelry live again. So history sort of coming to life in this way.
Okay, all right. And that wraps up our first half. We'll be back with a short, interesting segment in our second half.
What makes a truly awesome insurance company? Is it the skills to manage big numbers and big responsibilities? Well, that's definitely part of it. But there's more. It's the people. They're awesome. Super passionate about looking out for others and putting in their time for people's finances. It's not just the people. It's how we do things that's awesome. From being trendsetters of the industry to being connectors or inventors. It's about well-being and how we achieve it. Our teams hustle non-stop to meet the needs of the people. That's why we're on the rise. But it's not just about how we do things either. It's about how we improve things. Helping our clients thrive in a world that's full of awesome goals to achieve. Making the maximum out of the minimum. But wait, there's more to it. There's one last thing that truly makes an insurance company awesome. It's that we care about our people and our customers. All of this combined, it's been a pretty awesome year. And we're excited for tomorrow.
The latest issue of LMD is available at lmdmall.lk as well as selected supermarkets and bookshops. You can also access the digital version on Press Reader, Maxter, our social media platforms and WhatsApp.
Hi and welcome to the second half of Living Gets Real. We are with Rashantha Devanesan. So just a few interesting questions just to get to know you a bit more personally. If you could travel to any point back in time, what year would you choose and why?
This is a very interesting question, I must say. I would probably love to live in sort of the 15th, 16th centuries. It was sort of Renaissance in Europe. It was also a wonderful time in India. It was a period of the Mughals, lots of, and Central Asia. But knowing my luck, I probably would have been a serf or something. But if I could have, I would have been a lady wearing all those beautiful jewels and dresses and things like that.
All right. And what are the few things, or maybe what are a few, maybe the top thing on your bucket list? What's on top of your bucket list?
At this point?
At this point.
I want to visit Uzbekistan and the Silk Road because I've read up on it so much. I've done jewelry collections from there. And my husband and I have been talking about it for some years. COVID came and a trip that was fairly imminent then had to be postponed. So yes, that's next on the bucket list.
Uzbekistan, all right. And what decision do you look back on and say, what was I thinking? Has there ever been?
I'm not a very impulsive person, so I can't think about anything like that.
Right.
Getting our second dog, but I love her so much that I don't regret it, but I mean,
Now part of family.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Okay.
But at that time it was like, oh my gosh, because unlike our older dog, she's hugely frisky and naughty and smart, but now of course, I mean, she's our baby.
And what is the first thing you would do if you win the lottery?
If I win the lottery, keep a large chunk of it for myself, but also distribute a fairly large part of it, because that also gives me joy. It's not entirely selfless, you know. You feel good, so yeah, seeing something you can do with it.
All right. If you were to title this chapter in your life, what would the title be? If you could just give it a... Assume it's a book and you're giving it a title. What would it be?
The Home Run.
Okay. Do you have a musical album that you could play on repeat for hours and just listen to that? If there is one, what would it be?
A lot of them, but there's one that is not generally in the genre that I normally listen to, but I love it. It's called Days Like This by Van Morrison.
Van Morrison, right, yeah. Do you have a hidden talent apart from crafting these beautiful pieces? Do you have a hidden talent?
I do, I paint,
Okay.
but very sporadically. And the last sort of painting session I did was during COVID, when I was stuck in a hotel in quarantine. But I prefer doing the jewelry because I am able to do it whenever I want. Painting doesn't work that way.
That way. Okay. And finally, what is your guilty pleasure?
Sweets.
As so is everybody's. All right, and that's a wrap on the show. Thank you so
you
much
very
for
much.
taking the time. We're glad you were here.
There you have it. These are my answers to the questions and the game. Be sure to check out Living's Instagram and Facebook pages for the latest episodes of Living Gets Real.